performance informs my drawings. It's also a big social experiment, and I have been orchestrating performances now that involve other people, and I will literally tell them, like, I'm experimenting with you, and they're down for it, you know. So it's a way of looking at the limitations, but also the structures of society, and kind of figuring out ways to explore new possibilities, you know, like kind of get to know people a little bit better, learn about social interactions, who's brave, who's shy. That's always very interesting in regards to performance. But I go in and out in between drawings and performance. And sometimes the drawings are performative. So the body in itself carries its own narrative, carries its own history. Certain complexions carry a history. Certain types of hair and certain clothing is a vessel. It's also a part of how we want to be perceived in certain spaces. So it's another form of self-expression, but also another way for me to digest the world around me. During COVID, I gained a lot of weight, and I lost it all. Good thing, because I had this made a long time ago. But it was a way of thinking about the weight that we carry, or women carry in general, Black women carry, and even with that weight, you still have to rise. I'm still putting on my heels and walking proper, right? And this could have been any space. It could have been my home. It could have been, I mean, in certain classrooms, I have to like reel myself in, you know. So for me, it's another way of saying that regardless of this weight that is being carried, you still have to always put your best foot forward. You still have to always be strong and give the appearance of strength. I do not practice yoga, but I go to the Y sometimes just to be able to try something outside. I love CrossFit and weights, and it's just a different momentum. The urgency is different, and it's more about, I mean, the other two are about breathing, but that one's more intentional, and the instructors just tend to pick more relaxing music in those spaces, so and that's why I switched it to cool down, because you can't carry that same energy into every space. You have to have a moment where you're like, okay, I know I did this, now I'm about to cool down, so I can not be like this around other people. So it's a way of just practicing restraint, or working towards restraint. I also have my orange belt, and so in taking karate lessons, my dad's like a fourth degree black belt, and the thing that I found was very interesting is that karate is more so about restraint than strength, than like being able to, you know, to assault or fight someone back. It's about the ability to not use that power, which I also think is there's power in restraint. There was a lot of observations that I started making, larger societal observations, like everything from the Capitol riots to losing friends and family members to COVID, and wanting to laugh at death. You know, at some point you have to develop a mechanism. So I'm still negotiating what that means, but thinking about, you know, this kind of character, the Wild West, like America was kind of becoming this Wild West, you know, every man for him or herself. And I'm responding to this and still wanting to grasp onto this thing that I said I was going to, which was thinking about the Gullah Geechee people here and the important conversations that they're having and maintaining their culture. So I want to bring that in visually, in a way to acknowledge that history, but also as a way to say this is a point of departure, right? This is a space that I acknowledge is there, but I want to expand this conversation into things that I'm currently experiencing. And I came here for a conference like 2 or 3 years ago, and I met Elizabeth Howie there. And I like to think of my artist talks as performances as well. And so I was invited to, you know, to come back, and I at that conference, the idea of like, I didn't know Indigo was produced here. I was like, oh my God, Indigo is produced here, like Blue Jeans. This is the cradle of Blue Jeans, you know? And so the more research that I did, I later on found out that it really isn't integrated in Gullah Geechee culture. So I had to take that L and move on and learn to embrace it in another way, where it is a thread of this state. You know, literally, the state flag, the color is indigo. So it's also a way for me to learn South Carolina. So that little crescent moon that everybody thinks is a moon is something else. It's not a moon, which I thought was really interesting. I see people here like, really, it's not the moon? No, it's not. It's some French thing you would wear off the battle, which I thought was really interesting. So I'm still learning this place. Well, you saw me riding in on roller skates, so I actually have started implementing. Let me tell you about roller skating. I could always do it. That is a childhood pastime of mine. It's also a great way to dance and move around in your studio. But I wanted to revisit it during the time that we were like in quarantine. And I ended up I'm teaching a class on roller skating. But I think the thing about roller skating is that you have to be listening to music. And music is a major aspect of the pulse of who I am. I come from a family of musicians. There's a lot of kind of areas that are similar in regards to composition, like terminology in regards to art, and music is very closely rhythm, like you're talking about, like it's choreographed, and I like for things to repeat in pieces similar to the way it does in music. So for me, it's about being improvisational, just like Miles Davis or John Coltrane, and that's what I'm listening to as I'm making this work. I also feel like that's the voices of the ancestors coming through. So I'm listening to a wide range, everybody from Sam Cooke to SZA, you know, and I'm still learning the newer artists as well. But yeah, Robert Glasper. So there's a lot of jazz, R&B, kind of genre bending music that I'm listening to. So that's the best way I can describe, you know, why there's a rhythmic quality to the work. So the card that was given out to promote this, that piece was an integral moment in thinking about, am I reflected in this space? Is my history in this space? In that particular performance, I was asked to do a performance piece in this museum, and I didn't see any women of color on the walls. And for me, that was like, that's why I don't have a connection. So these sketchbooks that you guys were drawing in were the same sketchbook that audience used for that performance. And that was my way of resolving it. So I don't want to go into space and just be like, nobody's here. You know, I want to go in and I want to feel that void. And Audre Lorde's piece that we were listening to, she talks a lot about filling voids, right? So you can see the void. It's another thing when you feel it. Drawing and performance is connected in the way that I identify performance as a way of leaving a psychological mark. So there's a physical mark, like you're seeing the sequence. A lot of people notice, not let me say that, not a lot of people notice the sequence, but there has been people that will come and say, yeah, is that a part of the work? I just like sparkly things. I've always been into sparkly things, and sequins don't tend to stay, like you can see sparkles. They don't tend to stay on long, but it is, I talk a lot about the remnants, or it's another word, when something is left behind. I'm drawing a blank on it right now. And that's the other thing about performance. I'm actually doing quite well. There's been instances where I can't talk after a performance, and that's why I needed to cool down. Like I needed that space because I knew I wanted to engage with you all here. So it's another word that's gonna come to me at some point. But this idea of leaving a remnant behind, something that, you said what?
Residue.
A residue, close. Residue's kind of icky to me, but yeah, residue is getting there. Yeah, it's definitely getting there. The ladders, these are not my ladders. Otherwise, I would have painted them blue. And I just have green filaments. You know, at Wofford we have like we have three 3D printers, and that was the closest to the green of the Statue of Liberty that I could get to. But colors this one is very particular. So this is the Pan-African flag, or colors from the Pan-African flag. So that just so happened to match up. Yeah. You know how something is your favorite color and you tend to find, oh, I just so happen to pick pillows that match my room perfect. It's because you're picking everything, you know, that works for you. Yeah. That's a great connection. Thank you.